We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 117b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a brisa which discussed the Mishkan when it was in Gilgal. At that time, the Mizbech was referred to as the Bama Gedola, the communal Bama, the great Bama. And Rabbi Shimon, unlike all the other Tanoim in the brisa, Rabbi Shimon says that not all karbanos were brought in Gilgal the same that they were in the Mishkan when it was in the Midbar. The only communal karbanos that were brought in the Mizbeach and the Bama Gedola in Gilgal was Psachim, was Karban Pesach, and also V'chovos Shekavua Lehen Zman. If you had obligatory karbanos with a set time, those were brought at the Bama Gedola, but no other communal obligations were brought on the Bama Gedola. And the Gemara continues and discusses the various opinions in the Brisa. Again, Rabbi Meir in the Brisa said that at the time that the Mishkan was in Gilgal, an individual would not bring any obligatory karbanos. That would not be on the Bama Gedola or the Bama Katana. No obligatory karbanos would be brought by a Yachid at all. And an individual would bring on the Bama Katana only voluntary karbanos, and that included Olos and Shlomim, but it also included Mincha. It also included the karbanos brought by a Nazir. And the Gemara says, my time with Rabbi Meir, what's the reason of Rabbi Meir? Do Amar Kra, because the Pasuk says, Lo Don't do like everything that we are doing today. This is a pasuk in Sefer Devarim. The full pasuk is Lo Sa'asun Kechol Asher Anachnu Osim Po Hayom Ish Kal Hayosher Be'einav. Everybody does whatever he wants to. And the point of the pasuk is Amar Lehen Moshe Yisrael, that Moshe says to Klal Yisrael, Ki Ailisu La'aretz, when you go up to Eretz Yisrael, Yesharos Takrivu, you should bring the Yesharos, and what that refers to is Nedavos, things that are Yosher Be'einav, things that he wants to voluntarily donate, but chovos lo sakrivu, you should not bring obligatory karbanos, and menachos and naziras, carbon mincha, and the karbanos offered by a nazir, yesharos ninu, those are also considered yesharos because a person voluntarily becomes a nazir. Now the Rabbanan that disagree with Rabbi Meir, they disagree specifically with regards to carbon mincha and the karbanos of a nazir. The Rabbanan say, ein mincha bebama, number one, there is no mincha, carbon mincha is not brought on a bama katana at all, and naziras, when it comes to the karbanos brought by a Nazir, so chovos ninu, those are actually obligations. In other words, it was voluntary to become a Nazir, but the karbanos themselves are considered to be obligatory. Rashi explains, Lo Sasun refers to La'achar bias ha'aretz mishtoi. This is talking about after you enter the land. V'kamar Lo Sasun kishatavo begilgol. Don't do like you're doing now when you get to Gilgal. And Rashi continues, Kechol asher anachnu osim po hayom, like everything that we do today, sha'anu bein tzibur bein yachid, because we now, in the times of the Mishkan, whether the community or whether the individual, makriven chatos, v'ashamos, uvechor, u'maiser, we bring all kinds of karbanos, chatos and asham, bechor, maiser, she'ein chovos, these are all obligations, she'ein kavu lehem zman, but they have no set time. V'kol she'ein chovos hakavu lehem zman, certainly when we're talking about obligations that have a set time. Avol ma'anu osim sham ish kol hayosher be'enav, but what are we going to do over there when we get to Gilgal? That's only going to be ish kol hayosher be'enav, hayachid lo yakrav sham ela nedarim unedavos sheyosher be'enav. An individual at that time will only bring what's yosher be'enav, meaning voluntary karbanos, nedarim and nedavos, lindor v'lindov, again, to take vows and donate karbanos, ad mosai kilo basam ad shetavo l'shilo, and that's until when? That's until you come to Shiloh. That's what the pasuk means when it says kilo basam, you haven't come yet to the menucha and the nachala. Again, as we said earlier, menucha refers to Shiloh, nachala refers to the Beis HaMikdash. Yesharos takrivu nedarim unedavos, you can bring yesharos, that's nedarim and nedavos, but chovos lo sakrivu, you don't bring obligations. Hayechidim, this is talking about the individuals not bringing obligatory karbanos. The ish ksiv, it says ish in the parsha, it's written ish, that means an individual. Velo polig akra bein gedola bein katana, and here the pasuk is not making a distinction between the bama gedola and the bama katana. The liyachid lo karav elo nidor v'nidav. The point is that at this time when the Mishkan is in Gilgal, a Yachid only brings Nidar v'Nidav, he only brings that which is voluntary. Hilkach she'ein Nidar v'Nidav, therefore what is not voluntary, ein karev bebamas Yachid, that's not brought on the individual private bama, to ha'ein kadshet tzibor kreven, and the kadshet tzibor are not offered there, kedetanan, as we learned in the Mishnah of Mas Nisan, karbanos tzibor kreven b'Mishkan, karbanos Yachid kreven b'bama, karbanos tzibor, communal karbanos, those are brought in the Mishkan, individual karbanos are brought in the bama, that's why bamas Yachid, which is only going to be a private individual, individual, it's not going to be communal at all, so there's going to be no obligatory karbanos that are brought on the Bamas Yachid. On the Bamas Sibor, on the Bama Gedola, there's going to be some obligatory karbanos, because again, you're going to have the communal obligatory karbanos that are brought there, but not by the individual. And again, Rabbi Meir says he includes Menachos and Nazirus Yesharos Ninu, Karban Mincha, the karbanos of a Nazir. Those are Yesharos, those are considered voluntary. The Afagav Devimlos Nizro having karbanos of Chova Olav, even though when the Nazirus is completed, there's an obligation there to bring the karbanos. Miu Al Yedei Neder Bo Olav, but nevertheless, it's happening through a Neder because he voluntarily becomes a Nazir. And the Rabbanan, they disagree with Rabbi Meir in terms of Minachos and Nazirus. When it comes to Mincha, Ein Mincha Bebama, they hold there is no Mincha by Bama. Kedamrin Lekamon, this we're going to say later on, Zevachim Velo Minachos. You only bring Zevachim, that's animal karbanos, and not Minachos. Dechsiv Lamana Asher Yaviu B'nai Yisrael Al Panei Hasada Hainu Bamos. When it says Al Panei Hasada, that's a reference in the pasuk the Bamos Shas Heter Shalahem, when it's mutter to have Bamos V'Haviyum LaHashem Osam Shehukdashu B'Shas Heter V'Lo Hispik LaHaviyum Ad Shenesru, those that were sanctified, consecrated when it was mutter, but you didn't bring it. The person wasn't able to bring the karbanos till they were prohibited. Kida Amran B'Hashochid Le'el, like we said earlier, the pasuk Zeh B'Kodshe Kodshim Shehukdashu B'Shas Heter. This particular pasuk is talking about Kodshe Kodshim, which were sanctified when Bamos were mutter. V'Hikrivam B'Shas Isser Kai, and then they're being offered at the time that Bamos are Asr. V'Zavchu Zivchei Shlomim Mefarish B'Toras Kohanim Ainli Shekarvu B'Bama Ella Shlomim. And so it says in Toras Kohanim on that that a Bama, we only know you can bring Shlomim to Hokimna B'Kodshe Bama Minayin Af Ola. How do you know also an Ola? Talmud Lomar Zvachim, it says Zvachim Yochel Af Chatos V'Yosham. Talmud Lomar Osam, one might think even Chatos and Osham, it says Osham. Umaro Isa, how do you know which to include and which not to include? Acharei Sheribo Miyet, once we're including and excluding. Amrit Ma Shlomim Haboim B'Neder Unadava, just like Shlomim is donated, it's voluntary. Afkol Haba B'Neder Unadava, so too it has to be voluntary. Ulu Rabbi Meir Israbu Nami Menachos Unaziros, and according to Rabbi Meir, again we include Mincha and the karbanos of a Nazir. V'Rabbanan Daiki Zvachim V'Lo Menachos, the Rabbanan say no, it's Zvachim and not Mincha. Ela Davar Hazavuach, it has to be something which is slaughtered. And again, Nazirus, in terms of the opinion of the Rabbanan, when it comes to Nazirus Chovahi, that's fundamentally obligatory karban. Tehu Lo Hisnadev Elo HaKarbanos, he didn't donate the karbanos. Elo Asar Atzma B'Yainu V'Teglachas, he just prohibited himself in wine and in shaving. Umei Elov Nischai B'Karbanos, and then on its own there's an obligation of karbanos. And the Gemara continues, Amar Shmuel, Shmuel says, Machlokas B'Chatos V'Yosham, the Machlokas between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan in terms of Nazirus is by the Chatos and the Yosham that are brought by the Nazir. Avol Bi'olos U'Shlamim, but when it comes to the Olos and Shlamim that are brought by the Nazir, Divrei HaKol Yesharos Ninhu V'Karvi, everybody agrees those are considered Yesharos, those are considered to be voluntary and they are offered. And Rashi explains, Machlokas, the Rabbi Meir V'Rabbanan, the Machlokas between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan, Bin Nazirus, by Nazirus, again, in which they're arguing by Nazirus whether that's considered to be voluntary. That's Rabbi Meir's opinion. The Rabbanan say that it's considered to be obligatory. That's Bechatos V'Yosham Sheba. That's by Chatos and Osham. That's where the Rabbanan say it's obligatory. Aval Olos U'Shlamim the Nazir, but the Olos and Shlamim brought by a Nazir, Divrei HaKol Karvi, everybody agrees those are offered. Again, those are offered on private bamos because they're considered to be voluntary according to everyone. And the Gemara continues, Mosiv Rabba asks a question from the following Brisa, Chazav Eshok, the breast and the thigh, Utrumas Lachmei Toda, that which is separated by the Lachmei Toda, we'll see Rashi in a moment. Nohagin B'Bama Gedola, those apply by Bama Gedola. They Nohagin B'Bama Katana, and those do not apply by Bama Katana. Rashi explains, Chazav Eshok refers to Hamuram Mishlamim Utoda. They would again separate the Chazav Eshok from the Shlamim and the Toda, those would go to the Kohanim. V'ar B'Chalos Hamuramos L'Kohen, and the 4 chalos that are separated for the Kohen from the 4 different types of chalos, from the 4 different types of loaves by a carbon toda, carbon, like the pasuk says. So those apply by Bama Gedola. And Rashi continues, Ve'eno hagin b'Bama Katana, they don't apply by a Bama Katana, Garsinan b'Sof Pirkin, that's the text at the end of our parak, lohanif tenufal Hashem. The pasuk, it's written over there, lohanif tenufal Hashem, velo b'Bama, we understand from that pasuk that it doesn't apply to a bama. And the point over here, as the Gemara will say in a moment, v'ilu muram me'el nazir, in terms of that which is separated from the ram of the nazir, dahainu zroa b'sheila, which is the zroa b'sheila, shaira v'lotanya, that is left out of this brisa. It's not in this brisa. And what do we see from that? Shmami, no, we see from here, lo karvi shalmei nazir b'bama, that this brisa holds shalmei nazir is not offered at all on an individual bama. Do you have a karvi? Because if the shalmei nazir was offered, have it tani delo noig be nami truma didei. So then the brisa would say that the truma doesn't apply by shalmei nazir. It must be that shalmei nazir entirely does not apply by bama katana. That seems to be what the brisa is saying. As the Gemara now goes on to say, v'ilu hazroa b'sheila shaira, when it comes to the cooked foreleg, that is left out of this brisa. Again, that applies by shalmei nazir. Now iyamrit b'shlama ba'olo ushlamim pligi. If you say correctly that there's a machlokus between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan by ola and shlamim, whether it applies by bamas yachid, and the Rabbanan say it does not apply, so hamani Rabbanani, then this brisa would be the Rabbanan. Elo iyamrit b'chatas v'yasham pligi. But if you say they only argue by the chatas and the yasham of the nazir, but everybody agrees that ola and shlamim are brought on a bamas yachid, so then hamani, so then who's the author of this brisa? And so the Gemara revises the statement, ela rather itmar hachi itmar. If anything was stated, the following was stated. Amar Shmuel says, machlokus ba'ola ushlamim. The machlokus by Nazirus is by ola and shlamim. Do those karbanos by the ola and shlamim of the nazir, are those brought on a bamas yachid? That's the machlokus tanoim. Aval bechatas v'yasham, but the chatas and the yasham that are brought by a nazir, divrei hakol chovos ninu, there everybody agrees it's considered to be obligatory. V'lo karvi, and it is not offered. Even Rabbi Meir would agree that the chatas and the yasham of the nazir are not offered on bamas yachid. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, quoting again from the Brisa on the previous Amud, V'chachamim omrim, and the Chachamim say, Kol shahat tzibur makrivin bi'ol v'chulu. The Chachamim, again, they say that anything that the community, any communal karbonos that would be brought in the Mishkan when it was in the Midbar, that would be the same for the Mishkan when it was in Gilgal, but that would not be true by a private individual's karbonos. Rabbi Yehuda disagreed. Rabbi Yehuda said that when it came to the Bama Gedola in Gilgal, every type of carbon that was brought in the Mishkan in the Midbar, whether it was communal, whether it was individual, would be brought on the Bama Gedola in Gilgal. And the Gemara says, Mai tai mayu de Rabbanan, what's the reason of the Rabbanan? And the reason is Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, Ish hayashar be'enav, what is yashar be'enav for the person to bring, Yasa, that's what he will do. Ish yesharos hu de likruv chovos lo likruv, when it comes to the individual, he only brings that which is voluntary, not that which is obligatory. V'tzibur, but when it comes to the tzibur, the community, afilu chovos likruv, so even that which is obligatory is going to be offered. And Rashi explains, Ishu de chovos lo hekriva, when it comes to the individual, he does not bring chovos, va'afilu begedola. The point is, according to the Rabbanan, even on the Bama Gedola, the individual does not bring chovos. Avot tzibor makrivim chovos, but the community does bring chovos. They do bring obligatory karbonos, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph.